Here, Tuesday, February 6, 2018, at 6:30. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. First and foremost, thanks, Phillipston Board of Selectmen office, come on over. I appreciate you coming over. But before we start, we can just do some introductions around the room. If we can start over there with you, sir, that'd be great.
Yeah, Terry Demick, Phillipston.
John Telipsiak, Phillipston.
Tom Perlay, Chairman of Select Board, Phillipston.
I'm Carter Terenzini, the town administrator here in Templeton.
Diane Haley Brooks, Selectwoman.
Doug Morrison, Selectman.
John Kaplan, Selectman.
Julie Richards, Select Woman.
Cameron Forts, Selectman.
Well, thank you so much again for coming. I want to discuss initially with some current joint efforts that we're doing right now with Phillipston, i.e. Dispatch. Mr. Tenzini?
Well, first, we wanted to let you know that we've been exploring and think we will go forward with a change in a service that we currently use that we think will give you substantial added value. We currently have under contract a firm called Code Red. Think reverse 911, makes community contacts. However, I've connected this community with a firm that I've used previously called Connect TY. It's the Blackboard firm. They started out initially doing a lot of educational online classes and such, which will give us unlimited numbers of calls, texts, and emails that we can make. And we'll be able to set Phillipston up so that you can have unlimited number of users for that as well. And I've found it very useful, you know, town election day, town meeting day. You have to be kind of careful. You don't want to inundate people with too many things, but also road closures, electrical issues in town, community meetings. I've used it in other communities. If we were having a neighborhood park, we were going to have a work party, we can cordon off. You can have a geographic mapping where you can identify specific neighborhoods or roads. So I think it'll have a substantial amount of application for you. That would start around July 1. Be part of the new fiscal year. And we just wanted to let you know about that. And look forward to continuing to serve you. We've made a substantial number of increases over the last few years to serve the community. And hope to have an opportunity to talk with you about an extended IMA so we can continue to serve your needs. Be happy to answer any questions about that new service or anything else for the coming fiscal year.
Does it change the price, the cost?
Oh, well, we originally started pricing our services to you around $54,000 in 2008.
Yep.
And next year will be about $62,500, which will be an $8,000 increase roughly over the 10 years. So we've kept our pricing increases to about 1% a year.
So what, I'm sorry, what's going to be for next year?
62.5.
62.5.
Yeah. So we've done our very best to keep those increases.
Yeah.
I mean, 1% a year, pretty good pricing, I think. And we'd be happy to chat with you if it poses any challenges to you. But we're in the midst of making additional investments in the facility and would like to discuss with you the opportunity to discuss the IMA out a number of years. I think it technically actually expired within the last year or this year.
What has?
The IMA, the intermunicipal agreement between the two communities. I see y'all have it. I don't
Yeah.
have it here in front of me.
It automatically renews for additional 4 years unless terminated earlier set forth therein.
Right, so I'd have to look at the full agreement. But we are making a substantial investment, and we would like to talk about, the potential for a longer-term commitment. And I know the chief holds quarterly meetings. I don't sit in on those. But if there are operational issues or concerns that you as the policy board, and the policy board does not always share the same concerns or questions as the department heads do. They do great to advocate for their individual departments. Every one of my department heads, when we're going through budget sessions, pretty good in advocating for their needs. But the responsibility that falls on the three of you and the five of them is to have a little bit broader portfolio than department by department.
What term would you be looking for?
I don't know, I'd like to, just have the chief there, chat with you about it,
Yeah.
and see where it makes some sense to provide us each with some stability. I think there's been, between the regional emergency communication center fund, the rec fund, the department, and the wide area network, I think there's been about $250,000 investment over the last couple of years. And I think, maybe having the chief, one or two members from your board, one or two members from this board, have the chief there, if you're interested in that.
We're certainly interested in looking into it. I'm not sure what the advantages that you described, how they would fit for Phillipston. And I believe we already had a board set up, like
Yeah, we did.
a member of our community, just a resident and officials, but I don't think that has been happening.
That has not been, are you talking to the communications committee or
Well,
something?
yeah,
Yeah,
for the whole
that's
thing.
pretty well been gone by the wayside for almost nigh on to 5+ years now. I think that right now, what they basically have is the chiefs get together. I don't know if they include the emergency management directors in that. I would certainly hope that they do.
Chief, could you weigh in on that a little bit?
I do attend those meetings, and I wear both hats in our town.
Oh, you're the emergency management director. Okay, we have a separate emergency
Right.
management director.
And you did make a comment that, how will it benefit Phillipston? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Um,
There's the reverse call and
No,
all
understood.
that. It seems like you guys have already been doing that or know about it. I mean, that's the first I've heard of
Yeah,
it.
we've
tonight.
been using that for some time now. It's a great tool for us here in this community. For Phillipston, just this morning, I'm sure you heard about the tsunami warning this morning, right? The practice drill this morning. Well, when you go on TV and you get those things that go on TV, the alerts that go on TV, even when your TV's off, it pops on and it gives you the alert. This is a secondary added measure to that. So if you're not in a room with the TV, your phone's going to ring, or your email's going to go off, or something's going to go off. It's going to give you the identify what's going on in the community. If there's a natural disaster, there's power lines. I know we still use it for school, they have their own, but for school closings and stuff like that, or anything else that has to go on. So it does impact the community, especially the cyber tech communities that we are today. Everybody has smartphones. It does impact the community greatly. And it doesn't how small or how large, it doesn't matter. It's going to impact the community. And I definitely would like to sit down, obviously, with the chiefs, Carter and some of your staff to really look into that program. It's really a great program.
So we have it right now for just the community of Templeton. It's called Code Red, and it's pretty restrictive as to how often we can use it. In fact, we can only make about 5 messages a year. The new program is called Connect TY. It's from a company called Blackboard. And it is unlimited. So as I said, in other communities, I've used it for everything from during the ice storm, October of, was it '08? I think, if I'm remembering right. The emergency shelter's gonna be open from this time to this time, or cooling shelters at some points in the summer. We've used it for, today's Saturday, the town election's gonna be on Tuesday or on Wednesday. The town meeting's gonna be on Saturday in that particular community. You don't have to make a community-wide call. You can actually draw an area that you want to call. And so, for instance, in one community, we had a local park that was the subject of a work party annually, and then a discussion with the neighborhood. And we were able to call those 125 folks within that circle that we could draw. Or if we were gonna have a road closure, and we really needed people to kind of, okay, folks, tomorrow's the day, we've been telling you about it, and we're going to be paving Dudley Road, and we just need you to know that come 7:30 in the morning, we really need folks kind of out of their driveways, or you could end up being trapped there for a while. My highway guy, you got a smaller crew, but in this one community, we had about 15 plowers and highway employees. One call, because you can set it up with multiple different, our emergency management, the community emergency response team. How many folks does Richard have? 30 plus?
Yes.
So he can set that up, and Chief, do you have a CERT team?
We do know.
Okay. So our emergency management director has about 30 people on this community emergency response team. He can set up a work group and launch a call to just those 30. So it has a pretty widespread applicability. You can be very creative about how you use it. If you don't want to use it, that's fine as well. But we're certainly, I think we'll have that as a tool that we can make available to you should you wish. Come July 1, that's our plan.
We had said with this new company, the calls would be unlimited.
Unlimited numbers of calls you can
Because
make.
I was wondering, like, who decides what can be done? What were you doing before then? was like-
We did not much of anything for the 6,600 bucks we were spending, because people were always too nervous to get above the 11,500 message service units that you can use. So this new firm that I've connected with them, it's unlimited. It's only limits are your imagination and how many times calls you want to make to your people, because
Right, yeah, that's the other
you're not,
thing is it's
you're
like-
not going to call, but you're not going to call every member of the community for everything. So if we have a construction project on South Street or Dudley Road or Hubbardton Road, we can physically, with a mouse, draw that street and the feeder streets. And the system knows who's registered in that area. You can register cell phones, you can register landlines, they can get texts, they can get emails.
And this is centered within dispatch?
It's centered within dispatch center, yep, yep. We can launch calls on your behalf if there's something that you need to have done, or we can give you unlimited number of administrators at your end. You would have one, maybe two super administrators, if you will, and then you could have lesser ones who perhaps, so in the case of the emergency management director, he, in our town, would have unlimited ability to contact his CERT team, a little bit more limited ability to launch townwide messages. And our light and our water, you know, if they're gonna be flushing hydrants in a given area. So it's got quite a bit of wide-ranging applicability, and be happy to set up a webinar to show you its many features.
Well, it's interesting. It's, like I said, it's new to me, that we would consider be going into this.
Well, we find that communication is the critical piece. We had a all boards meeting, and I think that virtually every board member, when you talked about the challenges they faced, was communication, whether it's, you know, our little 96 people watch, our fire chief is in here, they have an officers meeting tonight. You know, he and I had a little 1-hour talk of the town, and it's 96 people that saw what we did so far.
Okay.
What about the rest of IMA?
And so, you know, we just want to make you aware of that, make you aware of the pricing, and then, as the chairman said, sit down and explore extending the IMA out a bit, given what we're facing for, you know, new investments in the facility, and wanting to make sure that that we're right-sizing it. Because right now, every decision we make includes the call volume that you all generate.
Tom?
I have a question directed to you. Tom Speck, taxpayer in Phillipston. I heard the contract has expired. If the contract has expired, are we still under the contract?
Well, I may have misspoke, 'cause I don't have the copy in front of me, but
Is it a document such that it renews itself automatically?
yeah, there's
Whether people sit
there's an
down and do
evergreen
it?
in it, unless you opt out.
4 years, right? At least that's how I interpreted it.
Chief has a contract for you. Thank you.
What section is it there?
Section 8, page 3.
So it expires in 18, unless you terminate it. Where's the termination clause? Unless terminated earlier, set forth herein.
Yeah, termination, under that
Effective.
jumps back to, page 2.
6, isn't
I
it?
think it's 6, right?
6. Yeah, so it's March 1. So it's a 4-year term, but you can opt out on or about March 1, if I'm reading this correctly.
You can opt out anytime, I believe. I just have to give you a year's notice.
That's right.
I really think we need to,
Thank you, Chief.
Well, you can hold that.
we really need to have a meeting like you were mentioning,
Sure.
and have us sit down.
Sure.
Because there's other options out there that we're exploring right now, just to be honest with you. And maybe you would be interested also, I don't know. So we really need to sit down and have a meeting sometime soon.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I would agree with you. I think between our two communities, and since we're so closely aligned, between sharing a school district, you know, I have friends of mine that live in Phillipston, and, you know, people in Phillipston have friends in Templeton, and there's a lot of similarities between the two communities in demographics. I think that there are a lot of benefits that there are to be shared between the communities that we need to explore, whether or not we act on them or whether or not we sign anything. I think even to have an open line of communication, maybe on a semi-annual basis, where we sit down and we talk about our pain points within each community or explore certain items of budgetary interests, I think that would serve to be a huge benefit. And whether or not we come to, you know, every year and we say, you know, this is what we need and this is what we need, the idea that we're just sitting down and communicating with one another is a huge step forward in the right direction as we share that regional school district. So I think that's, and if the rest of the board would agree with that too, I think we should just formally establish something maybe between the two towns to do something on a yearly or semi-annual basis that would allow for that synergy between our communities.
Sure.
Certainly couldn't hurt.
No?
Tom?
I have another question. I'm very curious, why wasn't Phillipston invited to join Code Red? And even if it meant more money, we could have maybe sat down and talked about it and paid the money to get the additional placeholders.
I don't know why Phillipston wasn't invited to join Code Red back then. I can tell you, I believe that from my perspective, I've only been here 18 months, and though I've been threatened with bodily harm if I should leave, I do hope to be gone in another 18 months. But I do think that I've brought to the community, and this board has spoke to the need for more types of interactions like this. This was the second year for the all boards meeting. We have spent more time talking with our counterparts about potential regional partnerships and cooperation, whether it's been Winchendon or Hubbardton or Gardner or Ewell. Truthfully, I would suggest you count your blessings you weren't invited to join the Code Red, because the pricing was frankly not great. So I've tried to spend a lot of time not looking in the rearview mirror, but looking forward. And I can't speak to some of those individual decisions at those times. I wasn't here.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I could ask, is there something that I'm wondering if there's something that you're unhappy with that Templeton is not providing, or?
Well, we're, cost-wise is one thing.
Cost is one thing?
Yeah, cost is one thing.
Okay.
Well, I think we need to know more about this whole agreement, and what it means and how it works. Like, I believe because we're regionalized, there's grant monies that are provided.
There
this?
is. In order to move, you have to actually get permission to move from the statewide entity that sets these things out. But to Mr. Fort's point, if I may, the idea of meeting twice a year, I think, makes sense. I spoke today with the superintendent. We've developed, I think, a fairly good working relationship, and we said the same thing. You know, it can't be that you only meet once a year when the budget numbers are coming in, and you go, oh my golly, what are we gonna do? We have fill in the blank, 18 days to figure something out. So I think that Mr. Fort's point is well taken. And Eric attends a monthly meeting, and I've found that in previous lives, we'd have a monthly meeting with managers, and it's amazing how much comes out of those things. You know, I'm at a luncheon one time, and the guy's talking about he needs a code enforcement officer. I said, how many hours a week you need a code enforcement officer? He says, 8 hours. I said, geez, my building inspector's kind of only got about 32 hours a week of work done. How about if I sell them to you for 8 hours a week? And we made an arrangement which worked out very well for a number of years, by which our building inspector was in our town for 32 hours a week. And then he went to the other town for 8 hours a week, and we split that up, and we had an understanding that he could accept a call for either town and when he was in either town. And that came out of just a conversation. I have a need. Cool. What can we do to partner to fill that need in a way that makes sense for both of us? And I think that this community, back to the gentleman's question, has been much more intent on trying to do that over over the last 2 years anyways. Or if there are other, and again, you know, the second half of that agenda item, Mr. Chairman, was, you know, possible expansion to other items. If there are
Mhm.
needs that they have that we can possibly fill or partner on, we'd certainly be more than happy to explore that.
Absolutely.
We have young Eric in the back. Eric, would you stand up for a moment, please? Eric Pollard is our Municipal Management Fellow. He's a recent MPA grad from the University of Kentucky. Thank you. And he's the fellow that we just work to death and throw at all these things, so. He's got a lot of clean pages in his notebook to take notes on.
Yeah, he sure does.
So, like I say, if there are possible expansion to other items, that, other areas, you know, where we can be of some service.
Aside from cost, is the service that's provided acceptable?
The service is, pretty good service.
Okay.
Yep. You know, we've done work in our town with the antennas and stuff and radios and everything. Everything's working pretty good.
Because it's not just fire, it's police as well.
Police and,
That's right.
police and highway, yes.
No, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think any,
I just wanted to know if there were some things
No,
that,
No, nothing particular.
just for my own
Yep.
benefit. Okay.
Yeah, we had explored, Gardner invited us over there a couple of years ago. We went
Yep.
over and,
Mm-hmm,
but we didn't think that was a good thing.
yeah. Okay.
So
Thank
now
you.
we're looking at other places.
Thank you for answering.
But I definitely think we need to get together then,
Yeah.
sooner rather than later.
Go in depth on this, yep.
Yes. I mean, obviously, there's some things that need to be talked about and discussed on multiple ends.
Sure.
Sure.
Definitely.
Terry, you wanna be there? It'd have to be a night,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
I'll work with Carter if you can,
Sure.
set something with Chief Bennett and the fire chief.
whomever they want.
Yep, get something together sooner rather than later. Diane, you wanna be on this? Absolutely.
If I can ask Chief Stevens, who was at the meetings that you have or had?
Our quarterly meetings are the chiefs. So both fire and both police,
And that's where issues of dispatch were discussed?
call issues, yes. Yes.
And they continue to happen, the meetings? Yeah.
Once a quarter we meet. And that started last year. Right after I think I talked to John and Carter.
That's right.
Chiefs to report about
Yep.
that. Thank you.
Again, I think communication is the key to success.
Yeah.
In any community, I don't care if you're a 100-person community or a 10,000-person community, if you don't have communication, you really don't have anything. And I think communication's key. Hence why, you know, the all boards meeting for Templeton, I think is getting to be a huge success. And then also communicating with our surrounding partners between Winchendon and Phillipston and Hubbardston and Gardner. You know, I think that's key. So we all know, not so much what we're all doing, but we all know our growing pains, especially this season that we're in right now with, you know, with the woes of the financial, process among us at this point. So we all understand. We're not blinded by that at all. And we understand your concerns, but obviously I think we need to get more in depth in that so we can have a clear understanding of what you guys are thinking and talking about, and then where we can pick it up and help out, hopefully.
Good. I can make it before we leave.
Does Chief Stevens, do you need this back? I can make a
You're
copy.
welcome to have it. I have a couple with me.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything else, Carter? on that?
No, I mean, we just wanted to bring them current on that,
Okay.
because we think that the value-added service will be of great interest to you, and we can also, as I said, set you up with a webinar on that, have our dispatch folks patch you together with that.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to possibly moving dates of election. We want to have our town meetings before we have our town election, and are looking to push our TM deeper into May, June, to have more time to work on the budget. You want to kick this off for me?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, we're in the budget season now, and we're always struggling to get the budget ready for town meeting. It always seems like the very last week or the last couple days before town meeting, we're still tweaking the budget. So we really, need a few more weeks, to work on the budget. So that's part of the reason of wanting to move the town meeting, further down the calendar than it currently is. Then the other side of that is when we have the ballot, before we have town meeting, there's no good opportunity to explain to people potential ballot questions that could come up. Where if we had town meeting first, you could do a good presentation and you could educate the people on why there might be a debt exclusion or why there might be an override, on the ballot that's upcoming. So that's one of the reasons we want to move the election ahead of, move town meeting ahead of the election. Then the other part is, when new officials get elected, they immediately, take office. So when you have seasoned people that are being reelected, it's not a big deal. But when you bring new people in, they're just kind of thrown in the fire at town meeting towards the end of the fiscal year. They really, are struggling to learn, what is my role and responsibility? What am I supposed to do at this town meeting and that kind of thing. Where if the election is after town meeting, you now have the sitting select board, I'll use that as the example. You have the sitting select board that developed the budget, that developed what's going to be on the ballot, that is there to represent what the town's needs are. And then when you have the election afterwards and the new people come in, they're now ready to start fresh.
And you're seasoned moderator. You're not electing a moderator and then 10 days later throwing them into the breach.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is why we changed the term of our town clerk to not expire before the town meeting.
So the only relevance to Phillipston really has to do with the school committee, right?
Right.
Right.
That's the thing, so, yeah, because otherwise it doesn't matter what you guys do, so. My understanding is that it needs to be on the same day, so, right now we have it on our election day, right? So it's coterminous. Now, they could have their own special election just for the school committee, it could be at any time, and that could free up, both towns to do whatever's town meeting and town elections they want. That's one possibility, right?
That's a cost.
It's like a minimum of 5,000 potentially,
Yeah.
extra cost.
Yeah, oh, I understand the cost of running an election.
Right, so I mean, we're,
Yep, trying to avoid that, I understand.
We do have our two clerks here.
And, well, I think right now, guys, keep me straight, but, our town meeting and our elections are set in bylaw, so nothing's gonna change this year, for sure, right?
right.
No,
Yeah.
Well, we
I
weren't
think
changing
But
it
ours
this
would
year.
have to be a
Yeah.
bylaw change as well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But,
right.
and we put a bylaw change forth at last town meeting.
Yeah.
But part of the discussion, which is good, helpful discussion at the town meeting is, well, now we've got the school committee members being elected at different times. Did we have the discussion with Phillipston and, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Which we hadn't at that time. So that's kind of why we're here today
Yeah.
to talk about it, because we know it'll be a bylaw change.
Yeah.
It'll take town meeting vote to approve it. But we need to have the discussion and see, do you guys have the same struggle with the budget as well?
Well, I think everybody has those struggles with the budget, but we decided to work on it sooner than later, pushing things back, start the budget process earlier.
Yeah. But again, part of the problem with that is you don't get
Right.
your final numbers from the state until very late.
Just now.
Same with the schools, they have to develop their budget. They need time to do that. So yeah, you can work on the budget early, but it's not really, you can't really set it until really close to the end when you finally get the numbers from the state, from Worcester County, from the schools. So we can start early, but it doesn't help us on the back end.
That's right.
I understand,
We could
but
start in
Hence
June.
hence item 3 on the agenda.
Right, we could start in June. It really, obviously, when the governor sets his budget, which he just did, releases the cherry sheet, which he just did, And the schools, I'm typically somewhere around the 15th to the end of February is when, Narragansett gets their budget together, and whilst we're waiting for Monty Tech to get theirs. So we can start revenue projections, way back, in June, July. I mean, that's fine, but the issue at hand, like Doug said, it's not so much, and you guys have the same struggles that we have. So, I mean, if you wanted to, say if you had to get something on your ballot that needed to be on there, but you needed the town folks to vote on it first. It doesn't, road issues or financial issues or whatever that you need to be put on the ballot. If it's the ballot's first, then you have your town meeting and you bring it up, then you have to wait an entire year to put it back on the ballot. It makes no sense. Then on top of that, you have the same issues we have. So if you have a new fresh face that comes, that runs and, wins the election, he's gonna get, the first or second meeting he has is the town meeting. And he or she has no idea what the budget process is, what he or she is looking at, and then obviously the moderator as well. So if a new moderator is elected and, his first event is a week or 2 weeks later, he has no idea, or she has no idea what's going on in the town or how to progress forward. Hence why we did change, because the town clerk was on the same schedule, which that made really no sense. Can you imagine the town clerk being voted out, new town clerk being voted in? And then 2 weeks later, you have a town meeting. So all the signs have to go up, all the notices have to go out. That would just not, that's a setup for failure. That is not set up for success, that's for sure. That will hurt both communities. Hurt this one specifically, but both communities could potentially be hurt. So having this dialogue and open discussion concerning movement, because again, the municipal agreement that we have, it really doesn't really talk much, except the month. It's not a specific day. It says the month of May in the agreement. So there is some wiggle room that we have, I think, between the collective boards and some bylaw changes, because our bylaw would have to change just like yours. We did attempt to change ours at the special town meeting, but obviously, because of the outcry of the school committee, which we understood. And you know what, shame on us for not, bringing Phillipston in sooner. So we can all understand why we're trying to do things. Putting the cart before the horse sometimes isn't the most appropriate way to do business. And we're trying to be more business smart and business savvy.
What would you propose? I mean, if you had, your choice, what would the schedule for the meeting and the election be?
Well, as long as, for me personally, the farther we push it, better off we are. Because again, I think what hits us more is the school numbers, and Monty Tech, because we get those like a week. Again, we have a pre-town meeting with our advisory committee, and they're getting the final draft, so to speak, the day of the meeting, of their meeting, because of the numbers are not coming in, from certain areas that we need the numbers to come in from. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, it's nobody's fault. It's just business at this point. Yes, sir.
No, I'm sorry.
So as long as, like Mr. Morrison said, as long as the town meeting is prior to the election, that's what I care about. I'm sure Doug cares about the same thing. As far as what day it's on,
Day. They're looking for a date.
Right, so what I would, propose is that the town meeting get moved to, the last week or the week before of May, and then the election a couple of weeks after that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What we did in one community, I believe the town meeting was the last Thursday of May, and the town meeting was the last Thursday of May, and the election was the second Tuesday of June.
Okay.
And that's
Be a really good schedule.
how late, can you feel comfortable? How early can they feel comfortable? Because you can start the budget as early as you want, as the chairman says.
No, not
It's at
understand.
the tail end.
No,
The challenge, if I might, of letting the district hold its own election is if there was a building project of some sort, and they were relying upon a debt exclusion, you would then have the two communities voting on that debt exclusion on separate days, which may or may not be a good thing, because the district can't have the debt exclusion on its ballot.
Todd, do you have a question?
Yeah, a couple things. Now, personally, as an individual,
Mhm.
I don't see our issues in Phillipston being the same as Templeton in reference to the budgeting process and in reference to the things that you brought up. Things run very smoothly. Of course, that's my own personal opinion. Maybe you should look at your newly elected officials or officials who are already elected of making some kind of a bylaw change that their term runs from July 1 to June 30th. That solves the problem there. And it can be done no matter what the date is of the elections or town meetings.
If I can answer that
The
one
other-
question so far.
Let me finish.
Okay, sure.
And then you can answer them all. I affectionately call it the business. I've been in the education business for over 40 years.
Yes, sir.
And I don't think the state's ever come in with their numbers, concrete numbers, before June 30th. So we're all voting. Every town in the Commonwealth is voting on numbers that might change. I mean, how many times have we seen Monty Tech come back and say, oh, well, you know, we're gonna lower your assessment because money coming in from the state's changed. So the state argument, again, personally as an individual, I don't buy that in because we still don't have numbers even coming June 30th, most of the time. And I've seen numerous occasions where override votes have been different dates. And maybe that's good, maybe that's not good. And I suppose if you played politics and you had your override vote after, we'll say, Phillipston, and Phillipston doesn't vote it, the press may glamorize that, and before you know it, Templeton might have voted for the override, but they go, well, Phillipston didn't vote, so we're not going to. And I know in the past, I had personally forced Dr. Hammond's hand to get a vote so that Phillipston voted after Templeton on an issue. So you have good arguments in reference to your town, but again, like I said, personally and as an individual, I just don't see where they fit in terms of Phillipston. I mean, Phillipston's run our finances extremely well for at least the last 20 or more years. Always come in. This last year, we put quite a substantial amount of money into stabilization. In fact, this last year, we came in with a budget lower than the year before. The other thing is to sell the people on changing dates. And they have them, like tattooed in their brain or somewhere, and those dates are always there. And to try to convince people either on a ballot or at an annual town meeting, I just think it's gonna be hard. And then what might happen is Templeton votes and Phillipston doesn't, or vice versa. Phillipston votes it and Templeton doesn't. And then we're gonna wait another year. Or then you talk about special elections and special town meetings and stuff. And then you're spending money to have a meeting with just that one issue. And again, personally and as an individual, I'd rather have a town meeting with 5, 6, 7 articles than a town meeting with 1 article. Because you know that the people that are there are gonna have an opinion, and it may not go the way you want. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, sir, I appreciate that. To answer your first question, as far as changing the bylaws, that was looked into, I think a little bit by me. But the election process, which was really daunting and challenging, which obviously to us, it would have been easier just to change, the election day versus going through the entire election process. As far as the vote, Phillipston and Templeton voting for the same thing, other than the school committee, would be something to do with the school itself, as far as like a school override specifically. But as far as, other than that, then Phillipston votes for Phillipston stuff and Templeton votes for Templeton stuff, other than the school committee members and if there's anything to do with the regional school districts. So that would, I understand your point there. I mean, as far as Phillipston and the voting process, I mean, you got some great arguments, and I applaud your efforts, but, I mean, obviously, we're trying to put, you know, because right now, with all of that, just with the ballot being before the town election, there's things that can potentially need to be on that ballot for, at least for Templeton's perspective. I mean, Phillipston, you might have your own. I mean, you might need to do something for, you know, roads, or need to do potential overrun, maybe not right now, maybe because I know you guys are doing well financially, I got that. And Templeton is coming to, you know, a point where, you know, we're doing pretty well as well. We have money in stabilization and capital stabilization, and we have money in OPEB now, so, and we're doing okay.
Yeah.
You know, but we don't want to put the, you know, but again, putting the cart before the horse, especially when you have new elected officials coming on board, it just didn't make sense to us. Yes, ma'am.
Karen Foley, Town Clerk for Phillipston. Our town election is the first Monday in May, and our town meeting is the first Wednesday in May. So we have elections on Monday and town meeting on Wednesday, all in the same week. It's hectic, but we managed to get it done without any problem. I do have a couple questions. Do you have a bylaw as to when your annual report has to be printed and available? Because we do.
Yes.
Our annual town report, part of it is that we have to have our warrant in there for our annual town meeting. So it wouldn't be just making a bylaw change for when we're gonna have our election. It would also have to change for the annual report, because ours states that it has to be ready for the first Monday in May.
Is it all part of the same is it all part of the same
No, it's two
bylaw?
separate
Two
ones.
separate, okay.
So that's just my thoughts. I think, and it's just, the selectmen have to decide, and I'll do whatever our town decides. I think it would be good to have the town meeting and then a few weeks later have the election. Because sometimes it's not just new people coming in, it's the politics of the town and everybody running around about who's gonna get elected and is my article gonna get passed? And it's all jammed up within a few weeks, and it can be high anxiety.
Very daunting. I understand. Well, thank you for that.
But also, I do feel that both towns need to vote on the same day. They have to, because otherwise it's gonna just create a lot of havoc for nothing.
It will.
The elections need to be decided to be held on the same day. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So I think my standpoint here is that you guys are looking at this as an approach of, what is this gonna do for Phillipston? And I think the approach here is more or less, how can Phillipston and Templeton move in sync with each other because we share a school district? And we obviously have our pain points that we're suffering with this election time. And I'll be the first one to say, being a young guy, not knowing how town politics really operates, just knowing that there needed to be a change in Templeton with the way things happened. I was thrown into the town meeting with no municipal experience. I had no idea what was going on, and I was told to defend a budget that I hadn't even looked at yet. It's a very daunting task. It's very tough to do. And I am a huge proponent of putting that meeting before the town election so that you can defend that budget. That's just one of the pain points that we suffer, and we hit a lot of the other pain points. But the fact of the matter is that we can't change our election dates unless they fall on the same time that the school committees are elected. And the reason being is that if we aren't on sync with our communities that share a regional school district, what kind of message does that send? And I personally feel, I don't know the rest of the select board, but I would never be in favor of causing a rift in different election dates. So this is something that we really need to explore more on. What are the pain points? Kind of do the exploring and the analysis of what is this going to do to Phillipston? How many bylaws are you going to change? We'll have to come out with the concrete numbers and see exactly what the point is. because we obviously have ours. There may be some that you're not seeing, or maybe this is just too troublesome for you. But fact of the matter is we can't. I would be strongly opposed to changing those election dates, and I think that this would, if we were to move forward and remedy some of our pain points here and keep that synergy of election dates the same, is really the benefit of that in and of itself is we share the regional school district, and we need to be in sync with each other on that. So I think that more exploration is definitely needed, because we are coming up with points that I haven't even heard of. I didn't know you had 2 bylaws to be changed if we did change this for the annual report to have the warrant items on there.
So did we.
Yeah,
We
so.
had to as well.
We have an annual report bylaw too.
We do. Yes,
Well,
Carter?
for the warrant items on there, we have that on ours? We have to
Yes.
post the warrants?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your annual report as well.
Yes.
And this actually, if I might, is a perfect segue in the next item, and I don't know how you want to wrap this one up, but let me just comment that, yes, this community could solve its problem with a bylaw that says an elected official shall take office on such and such a date, up until such and such a. That's exactly what we did with the town clerk. Because you could have a new town clerk elected, and then 10 days later, they have to set up and manage the town meeting. And we frankly could solve our problem in some ways of having the town meeting before the election by having the town meeting in April. The challenge, which is the perfect segue into number 5,
Yeah.
I don't know how you're gonna wrap up number 4, is we don't get school budgets from our less than friends at Monty Tech, or our friends at the school district, as early as we would need them, in order to be ready for a late April town meeting. The earliest they can get their numbers, depending upon the year, because the governor has additional time in the election year to submit House 1. We get House 1 numbers in the off years, on or about January 20. But you don't get House 1 numbers in the election year on or about February 10. So I don't know how you want to wrap up number 4, Mr. Chairman, but at some point, I do think it really kind of sets up a good conversation on number 5.
Okay, well, I think we can,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I think I would like to propose maybe a subcommittee that's formed with the Templeton Board of Selectmen and the Phillipston Board of Selectmen to kind of explore this on a one-off nature and kind of look at, because we have number 3 and number 4 that I think we should communicate on in a much more, rather than have full boards kind of have that discussion in a subcommittee. If Phillipston would be attuned to that, maybe have a representative, establish a formal committee on exploring these options and things.
Do you have is this an agenda that you're referencing, this 3 and 4?
Yes, yes.
We emailed this over.
Oh, the email
I've got a
that,
couple.
there you go.
I think this
I have an
follows the
extra
bullet
one here,
points.
too.
We'll get you another
That's good.
copy here. Diane and I can share.
I think the 3 of us would give us.
Yeah, I think this,
Let's go.
these were the bullet points in the.
Yeah, and we send it on, so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would like to see, respectfully suggest that the town clerks be involved in that.
yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because they obviously have a big stake in this as well, so.
Yeah, and obviously maybe a member of the school
Well, they're the ones
committee.
that keep us out of jail.
Right, that's very true. That's true. And maybe a member of the school committee, yes.
As also maybe the FinComs as well should be represented in the towns.
One advisory committee,
Advisory
FinCom.
Committee and FinCom.
Okay, so we got advisory, town clerk. You want to do a resident at large from each community, and then,
I would
It's
keep
getting
it.
way too
I'll
big.
keep it small.
okay.
School Committee.
School
The
committee.
residents will have plenty of opportunity to vote upon any changes that
One select member
perhaps
from
you
each.
might be
Yeah.
proposing to the district agreement and your bylaws.
So that would be a 8-member board. So with one from the advisory FinCom, one from the town clerk, one town clerk from each, one school committee member, and then one select member would be an 8-member board, if that's agreeable.
Is that agreeable?
Sounds good to me.
Sure.
Sure.
I mean, again, open dialogue and discussion, I think, is key.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming all of you, as we have, been elected and then we hit the ground running.
Mhm.
Well, I would hope that a candidate for an office as serious as that is on the issues and knows what's going on, so it shouldn't be such a shock. So, that's just a comment on my.
No, I got you.
I know, I mean, we've all suffered that, but you figure out what you're doing.
Well, it's
Can I
good.
make a comment to that?
Sure.
I was on the issues, and I came to a lot of the board meetings, and I was elected, and it was nerve-wracking to defend a budget that you didn't create. So I abstained. I didn't create that budget. I can't defend that budget. I can't, I mean, I sat out in the audience and I didn't agree with all of the budget, so how can I vote on that budget? So I abstained.
I see.
Yeah.
I mean,
If I might,
that's just my commentary.
Mr.
I mean, I was
But you were
very-
aware of all.
Mr.
Yes, I
Chairman.
was aware
Yes.
of the issues.
Right, you just didn't agree.
I know, I got you.
Yeah, but I mean,
I
you
got you.
just kind of,
I got
I
you.
mean, I think that Julie felt
No,
the same way.
I understand
I
completely.
understand, we were well up on it.
Yeah.
And
It's just-
and I
it's like,
agree with
wow.
Diane, and I agree with Cam, that, you know, all we're looking to do is communicate with Phillipston and consider changing our election to be after the town meeting. That's
And
all
there are
we're
issues
considering
that
here.
we can
That's
Mr.
all
Chairman,
we're doing,
I'd
is
like to make
discussing
mention
that.
too that this committee here should be encompassing of also the dispatch and every, kind of establishing this as a working draft for not only this election issue.
No, please, no.
No, not at this
Can't do
time.
both.
No, you don't,
Dispatch involves
No.
us.
Yeah, that's, yeah,
no.
we here do
That
dispatch.
committee can't
Yeah,
handle
no,
that.
we understand, chief, that's not gonna happen.
Right.
Sorry.
Yes, yes.
No.
Sorry.
Would, I'm thinking more in terms of Phillipston,
Mhm.
would it serve Templeton's purpose to leave the annual town meetings where they are, and for both towns just to move the election dates to June? Might be a lot easier to convince the folks on a change like that than something that, suddenly they start feeling overwhelmed, they're not aware or don't want to listen to the reasons, et cetera, and maybe the best way to move on this would be to look at a bylaw change, just changing the election dates so they coincide.
No, I appreciate it.
Phillipston has their town meeting
He can talk about it.
earlier in the,
Yep.
where it is now.
I got you.
Maybe you could work with it at the same time.
Well, what I like to see this committee be formed, as Mr. Foyt's expressed. I think that's gonna be key to bring out all this information. Then that information can be presented to both boards of select boards, both boards. And then also it can be brought to the people as well, so they understand what's going on. This isn't happening overnight, and we understand that. So we want enough people to understand and grasp the reality of what's, potentially gonna be the process and how the process is gonna change. There's only one inevitable in life, and that is change. So change is good. But having this board, I think, is gonna be beneficial to both communities to get the information out and let them report back to us based on the information that, like you said, are being provided here, moving one date versus another. I think that's a good call. And do you guys agree with that?
Sure. Karen, you have something you want to say?
No, I just wanted everybody to know that we don't have our annual town meetings on the same day, Templeton and
Right.
Phillipston. And that is not necessary.
Yeah.
That date is not necessarily to
Right.
coincide.
No, it's just the election that we're concerned
Just
about.
the
Yes, sir.
election.
And then to follow up with that, I think personally it would be in Phillipston's best interest to set their elected officials' dates to July 1 to June 30th. I think that'll give the whole month for these people to get acclimated, figure out what's going on. It'll be an easier transition from the old guard to the new guard if that's going to happen. I think that would work. I think in terms of a compromise, both towns have the same election, either late in May or early June, and then the people who are elected,
Okay.
they take effect. I know
That's
Phillipston
nice.
sits down towards the end of June, and they reappoint all the new people, or all the people that are on boards and committees, and the new ones start July 1.
Okay, I mean, that's a great thing.
And that would be two
But
things.
again,
that
that's-
we might be able to
Mhm.
shoot for this coming town meeting.
Right, I think you're right, yes.
Just a question, has anybody done any research to see what other towns and/or cities have done to change, it's not heard of too often to have your town meeting first, so I would think there's probably a reason that happens, and usually the timing is around the May timeframe, so I'm curious to know if anyone has actually reached out to other towns that may have made changes, to talk to them to find out what was their driving factors, what the issues or ramifications were with the change, and maybe help to either justify or maybe open your eyes and say, "Ooh, didn't think of that," as a potential issue, because I don't know if that's
Go
occurred.
ahead, 'cause I got my 2 cents.
I haven't done detailed research. I can tell you the statute allows for those to happen anywhere in April, May, or June. I can tell you that inertia tends to control the day. I can tell you that there are some communities that have made the change for exactly the kinds of reasons that we outlined. Another thing that can happen is that a board adopts a budget, and it's not only that new incoming members may be not as knowledgeable as they'd like to be, they may not feel as comfortable as they'd be, but they may have come from a violently, diametrically opposed, and you now have a new board that is sitting on the podium, not defending the budget that a board crafted, but really actively opposing it, which makes for a difficult situation. For the most change has been in town meeting dates. Folks have experimented with, does Tuesday work better, does Saturday work better? That's where I've seen most of the experimentation.
Yes.
Just personal commentary to your point, I would say that's the democratic process in action. If you got elected, it's usually because you're on a platform and you are opposed to something in the current administration. So you sitting on that podium, allowing yourself to have the voice to stand up for or against what was passed or presented or prepared by a previous administration, that's the democratic process. I personally am against the switch for that reason. If I was running, I would want my voice to be heard, to say why I agree or disagree with the proposed budget, so that I could maybe enact a change based upon what I want to do during my term. Just playing off of something Tom had said about changing and shifting the terms, one of the issues I see is now you mentioned appointments, is you have the current board who may be on their way out making appointments for the future fiscal year. That may not be the current the incoming administration's appointments. So I think there are issues on both sides, and I can certainly see there are a lot of benefits from timing and having more time to do a budget. Obviously, being in finance for a lot of years, time is always a good thing, but as a taxpayer, I kind of like to know up front too where I stand earlier. So I understand all the sides of the issues.
I understand.
It's a tough one.
Thank you so much. Did you have something else to add?
Excuse me?
Did you have something else to add?
No, I thought Margaret said it very well.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll have to complement with that, scope for that board, kinda. And we can work that together. Moving into segue 5, other possibility with the Narragansett School amendments, dates for delivery, draft, final budget, 5K limit on repairs to, and leasing, lease building and alike. Kara, can you,
Where I'm coming at it is a desire to try to have a draft budget earlier. Ideally, we would have those by February 15th, certainly no later than February 28th, and then a final budget within 15 to 30 days later. That allows us to finalize a budget, because at the end of the day, we have a property cap and have to cover all of the assessments. And by getting and we have the same issue we're talking about with Gardner with respect to Monty Tech. By getting those budgets earlier, we can have a better discussion about what the school district's needs are, what we can afford, perhaps, hopefully compromise on numbers, and then set our budgets, because when the budgets come in too late, we're at a point where we're pretty close to having locked our budget in, and we have to make these last-minute adjustments. So that is the thought behind that, Chairman. And I will say that I had some conversations with the superintendent, and I think he understands the challenges that we face. I think he understands the merit of having the conversations earlier rather than later. You may recall one year in which we were basically done around April 3 and when we got the number. And
Right.
there is not a lot of running room left at that point, particularly if we have to entertain severe service cuts. So that's our hope, that we could come to agreement with Phillipston, working with the district on more defined and specific and earlier dates on getting these two levels of budgeting: draft, to give us a sense of what their thinking is, and final, which is a lower number than draft. Oh, that would be just my editorial.
Hope so. Right?
good until then.
Well
Right,
done.
Just so y'all understand, my wife is a special education administrator who hates town managers because we're cheap. I'm not fond of the school district because we have to eat it within our tax cap. Now, in other states, y'all can do whatever you want. And all we do is add it to the tax bill and collect it. And if we collect it, send it to you. The system that Massachusetts has chosen creates an extremely confrontational process that turns good friends into very disagreeable persons. And to the extent we can create a system that moves us up a little bit better, gives us a little bit better dates, I think it will make everything better for everyone.
Yes.
I just want to point out that the current timeline is by law, we have to, the school committee, I'm speaking as vice chair of the school committee now, needs to present to the towns the fully certified budget by March 31st. So the change you're looking for isn't, 6 months earlier, of course. So I just want to put in perspective what we're speaking about here. And there is also a tie-in to town meeting date, but March 31st is the absolute date that we can certify a budget for presentation in its final form to the towns. So I just wanted to put that out there. So that
And my suggestion, Chairman, is we pull that date a little bit forward, March 15th, and we put an intermediate step in which we are sent an official, if you will, draft budget, so we at least have a sense of where we're headed directional-wise. And as with this body, I did talk with the superintendent earlier, perhaps some occasional meetings throughout the course of the year, because I've observed all too often, the only time that the select boards meet with the school committee is at budget season to say,
Right. Which,
we don't have that much money.
right. Yes, ma'am.
just a couple other things to throw out there, because I certainly don't think that's unreasonable to start speaking to. We also need to have budget hearings, so one of the things that we'll need to do and keep in mind is how to factor in the whole community involvement piece to try and get more people to the table to voice an opinion on the school budget so that we can then turn around and look for that certification process. So obviously factoring in, and there are timelines, and I apologize because I can't quote the law verbatim, but I believe it's a week before we certify, we have to have at least one hearing. So it does, it does push us back a little bit, but I think it's a good point to start our discussion with what we can do to certainly work with the towns. I think as anyone who's done budgeting knows, and as I just said, the more time, the better, because obviously the governor keeps changing his numbers back past June 30th, as we know. But I think we could probably have a good handle on things. To him, he's given me the nod earlier, and want to work with the towns to make that happen, because I think that in fairness to everybody, it makes sense.
Right. Okay. And there were some other minor changes, obviously, the agreement that's in place right now, which was amended in 2004. Obviously, because there is a new school being built, you know, the process, the building you're in right now is no longer an elementary school. Baldenville will no longer be an elementary school, and those are also in the agreement. So some of the agreement has to be either amended or potentially rewritten because of that purposes, for legal purposes, you know, to keep us all, you know, all honest. There was a couple other issues, it's not really issues, but things that we need to discuss, you know, concerning the, you know, maybe the cost of repairs. If you got a chance to read that, the agreement, right now the agreement stipulates it's $5,000. Anything over $5,000 becomes a capital cost, which means the collective town would have to pay for that cost. Which again, I don't think this town has had any issues doing. We've always stepped up for the school. We love our school. We love our teachers. But in today's market value, in today's market rates for repairs, $5,000 is really nothing in repairs. That's a window today. That's really not that big of a catch. So I think some discussion concerning that, I think, should be made. I think there was some, there was some pipes frozen in the school recently, I think, and in the high school. I don't want to even tell what the cost was to repair those, but
Insurance.
I know it was the insurance, but I mean, if it was something that was catastrophic, that,
Probably gonna be somewhere in the area of $400,000,
right,
roughly.
So you can see my point, and that was two rooms, correct, if I'm right? That was,
No,
Was-
they're gonna have to replace the entire G floor.
They do.
All the way down.
Okay.
2 classrooms, roughly, well, we know not roughly, about $80,000 worth of equipment.
right. So as you can see, and I'm looking at like all the chapter 30 stuff and the 40B stuff, and I'm like, $5,000. But anyway, it's just something more to think about when we start putting together this, you know, looking at this agreement in the future, keeping the school committee, keeping the superintendent, keeping both boards, you know, on how we're gonna do this, and also, obviously, like Carter said, the budget process, and, you know, shifting things a little bit. You know, people just don't like change, and I understand that. But we all need to, you know, communicate together effectively so we can come up to the process that we're all gonna be, you know, synchronized a little bit so we can all work together as one. Because the earlier we get our numbers, the better off, you know, we feel. I'm sure you will feel the same way, the earlier you get your numbers, so you can start plugging your stuff in. It's just gonna be beneficial to both communities. I'm not saying, you know, the statutory requirement is a statutory requirement. We can add to, but we cannot take away, but we can add to. So, meaning that we understand by March 31st, we understand at least by 7 business days prior to that date, you need to have a open meeting with the public on both communities, on Phillipston side and Templeton. We understand all that. You know, even if just more discussion concerning that, so when we build the agreement, and that's in the agreement, that intermunicipal agreement that we have with the regional school district, that we all understand the same process, and we all adhere to the same process. You have anything to add? Carter, anything else? Does that sound okay?
I mean, you know, under the strictest reading of the agreement, if something happened in the Templeton building, the new Templeton building, or if something happened in Phillipston that was more than 5,000, I don't have the flexibility, and I don't know what the right number is, 25,000, maybe
Right.
something like that. But technically, the good doctor call me up and say, by the way,
Right.
I need X dollars, and I don't have them in the middle of the year like that.
And I would say that in both cases, you know, we try not to do that.
I know.
So unless it is an extraordinary cost, something is, you know, something really big has gone wrong and it can't be covered by insurance, that is something that we go to. I mean, certainly I know that you're not asking, but we could provide, I don't even know how many fixes. you know, we're fixing the bleachers in April, on April vacation here, and it's gonna be somewhere in the area of, you know, $10,000 or $8,000. Now, granted, I realize that's the regional building, but, you know, it's certainly, you know, there's BES, and we have things down in Phillips. We try to take care of as many of those things as possible. And we'd only come to you as, you know, as a last resort. I certainly agree, $5,000 in '04, you know, this window, maybe.
Maybe.
But you probably have to abate it, so that's probably about 18,000. I'm gonna suggest that, you know, 5,000 is probably more than that, yeah, so.
Don't lick the window.
Yeah, so, yeah, so anyway, we completely understand.
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess it would be reasonable to throw the elephant under the bus and say, ask the question of everybody seated here, select boards, superintendent, what would be a reasonable number? You must have something rolling around in your head, someone,
I do.
you know, if somebody said, we're gonna play a game, what's your number? What's your number? 100,000?
Well, based on the,
70?
no, based on market value and you'll have to, how contracted union wages has to be paid and all that collectively is about, I think $25,000 would be fair across the board. That's just my perspective. I mean, I'm not sure what my other board members would feel, but that's would be my perspective. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to offer just some of why there's a limit in there, because I think it's important that we set the playing field. And the limit's there because when the towns came together, we agreed to take care of our own assets. So any monies that the school budgets and spends are split via the population split. So if we were to dump everything into the school budget, if all of a sudden Phillipston needed $3 million of work, guess what, Templeton, you're now helping to pay for the Phillipston building.
Right.
That's a whole nother discussion.
No, you're right.
Yeah, so keeping, I agree, 5,000 is a little outdated, but we need to understand what that number looks like and what that implication will be, because even going to fund it for the 25, then we need to look at our budget.
Well,
and
they're
say,
gonna
do we
look at
have
their
the
budget, and
monies?
that's what I was gonna say
Yeah,
too.
we
You
need
can
to
make
add
up
money
any
to the
number that
budget.
you want to, but it's
So-
going in their budget.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that what you could get is a
So-
mean. Over a
Yeah.
period of 10 years, you could easily find what projects were done
Yeah,
at
and
any
they
of the
didn't even
buildings and
charge
find
us.
the mean. And think, okay, so the mean is, you know, of all the projects done
Yeah.
that would have,
They
you
never
know,
charged
how,
us.
you know, was $11,000, I don't know.
Right, no, I got you.
know, and I think that at that point, that you're coming at this issue from a perspective, you know, of data, you know, of information. You know, I think that, and I don't know that, I mean, certainly that would be something we could look into, it takes some time to dig it out. But we don't, yeah, I mean, we can certainly look back to look at those projects to see if there were any and what they were and how much they cost, and, you know, create the mean and bring that back.
I remember there was a leak at BES, and Kelly, I don't know if you were here then, but if I remember, have there been any checks that we have had to write to? No, because the schools have not charged us. So in all honesty, 25,000 is probably too high, because they are gonna have to put that, and that is what I was gonna say, Margaret, so thank you for bringing that up. They are gonna have to budget for that. So, and I understand that it's really, it is apportioned, and it's a safety net, and, I can appreciate what the schools, have done on the town's behalf, and they know for each town, you know, I'll just only speak for Templeton, cause I can't speak for you. They know where we're at, and they can't just, the good doctor can't just call up the town
Oh,
and
actually,
go, hey.
We could.
Yeah.
actually, if it's over 5,000, you can.
The law says he
The
can.
law says he can, but they have not,
Nope.
and they have found ways around that, and thank God, for insurance and other things, so I think that number, I don't even think that we need to do any research, and we need to just, you know, put a number in there that's reasonable, and
Yeah.
we don't need them putting anything else in their budget.
I think the last time, I think that we paid anything, I think was the, if I remember correctly, was the roof for Templeton Center. I believe that was the last time Templeton actually paid.
That might be possible,
No, if I remember correctly, that was the last time.
yeah,
Because
I don't
there
know.
was some issues with the insurance company or something.
But as you said, Mr. Chairman, even, set that aside for a moment. The agreement has some things in it such as names of schools
Yeah,
which are about to be
there's some
closed.
things that
Right.
have to
I
be
mean, it's
fixed.
been, it's
Right.
been
It's been
nigh on to
14
15.
years, like,
Nigh
the
on to
time that we
15
sit
years.
down at the table and update the agreement. Come
That's
on,
it.
it's been 14
That's,
years.
that's all we're saying.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
So hold on a second, so let's just talk about how we update the agreement, because I think that's important for
Right.
everybody. According to our agreement, it can be updated either by the school committee,
Mhm.
or either town can bring forward an amendment. I know as a school committee, we've been talking about
Mhm.
what we're, with the new building, we're hesitant to continue to go back to the towns all the time to make, name changes when we know if we just wait another year, we'll be able to hopefully encompass everything. So it is on our agenda
Great.
as far as review and looking for update. I think it makes more sense for us as a team, through whatever, if it's through these joint meetings, to work together, because we're gonna need to lobby the community to pass these at town meeting. And from the information I have, this is usually one of the most heated discussions when you have amendments to regional school agreements. So I think as a united front, we stand a much better chance for any type of amendments to our regional agreement, and it definitely needs to be.
Oh, absolutely,
So,
absolutely. Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Monty Tech said that they could make some minor changes to their agreement based on some law that's rolling around down in the State House. So some things like names, the amount of money appropriated towards building maintenance, and some of these others that you've talked about, couldn't those be things if, we're just talking some words. I don't even think there's even a paragraph that would be involved, something that the school committee could come up relatively soon and then send it to the different select boards. They have a regular meeting on it, and if it's okay with the selectmen, I have a lot of faith in
It
our
has to be.
selectmen and you guys. I read about you all the time in the paper.
Hopefully good
I don't know
things.
if that's a good or bad thing.
We're gonna take that in a positive
Well, I
light.
just pass a lot of it off as false news.
Okay, good.
But I think, I don't wanna come back here a year from now and talk about these things all again. Personally, I like to see movement, and this is a very small movement that could be done by the selectmen, and I don't think they'd be politically cold on the carpet with it.
Well, it still needs to go in front of the people too at town meeting, so no matter what amendment changes go forward, even if the board each board of selectmen agrees, it still has to go in front of the town as a warrant article for them to agree on the amended changes. As long as the school committee agrees and board of selectmen agrees and, yes,
And just one big piece, we cannot amend the agreement without the state buying in.
that's right.
And I have to tell you that I don't think the last time it was amended, it went before the state. So we may be opening a really big can of worms, which it needs to, really, the time has come.
We have to do this, yeah.
We do, so it's really a very large thing, potentially. So I just wanna throw that out there, when the state gets involved, it's a lot.
That's okay. I've been to the state house a couple times. They don't like me up there, I guess.
You can't come.
I don't, yeah, John, you can't go. I'm not going. You guys can go. Does anybody else have anything else to add? Carter?
That's all we had, Mr. Chairman. We did have an item in case there are any other issues that the folks have been thinking about as we put this together, but what I'm hearing as takeaways is we would need to identify the folks who would look at the dispatch. We have the structure for looking at the election. I would hope that Doug would be able to, he's been a strong proponent of this over the last couple of years. And I'm hearing and from one member of the district, the idea that there are some needed updates, a freshening of the agreement, and that working on that collectively is probably the best way forward. So those are the takeaways that I have.
Don't we already have a committee that's working on that?
We have our district, the school committee, as everyone knows, has their district reorganization advisory committee, which is just an advisory committee to the school committee, looking at what should the district potentially look like, what are the issues as we move forward with the new Templeton Central School and the model. So that's not the committee. I think some of the ideas, thoughts, comments, and what the committee will bring forward may help shape what we want to do as far as amending the agreement. But that is not the committee that would necessarily work on the, fully amending the agreement. That makes sense?
But there is a committee
Yes.
that you're part of. Am I wrong?
Yes, oh,
Yes.
yes, there's representatives from.
From both sides,
Yes.
from Phillipston and
From
from
the select
Templeton.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I just personally think that these very few items, maybe the school committee could come up with amendments. I mean, one of the schools doesn't even exist anymore. And I think.
You're in it.
I think those small changes to the present agreement, at an annual town meeting would sort of set the tone for maybe more changes at the next annual town meeting a year from now. So I still would like to see some little things coming down the pike. You know, you tell the people, you know, this agreement is older than most of the people in the audience, and you just, you know, and you get them convinced that there's gonna be also more coming down. These are no-brainers.
Yeah, but again, like she said, I mean, most likely what's gonna happen is, yeah, the school committee can work it, they can get input from the Board of Selectmen, they can get input from the people. I mean, I like seeing Gantt charts, I know about going backwards, planning from the time of our town meeting. How far out does it have to go to the State House, from the State House, how long does the State House have, and what's the
We're
statute?
testing the water with the State House, too.
We still have to go through that
And-
process, sir.
No, I understand that, but at least we've got some very few no-brainer things.
No, I got you.
Want to change, see how the state's gonna react, and maybe they're gonna say, well, we're not even gonna recognize the changes from back in the day, so, I mean,
And this still has to go to, I would think, town legals as well, from
Right,
Phillipston Town
right.
Legal, out town legal. Yes, sir.
So I'd like to offer, first, there are, for those districts that have been regionalized, say over 25 years, you'd be surprised at how many regional agreements are not on file, first.
Almost none.
Almost none. So there's the Cs. But that being said,
We're better than them.
we are. And I think
Just
that
saying.
one of the things I'd want to offer is that, certainly that we deal with our, McCormick and
Miracle County.
Merrick O'Connell, pardon me, is, I would want them to take a look at, this is what they specialize in, because I think that some of the things that we need to figure out is what we don't have in there. And, you know, and certainly, you know, go from that perspective about what their recommendations would be. Of course, they'd be many, I'm sure. And then look at the changes that are meaningful to both towns, which, you know, there is the sprucing up of the language, and of course is figuring out what would be an appropriate allotment in terms of capital expense, et cetera. But that'd be something, of course, that our towns would be able to figure out. So I think that let's see what we're missing first before we change. We change some of the minutia, and it's not. Changing the minutia would be fantastic, but if it's not structurally sound at all, it's not going to matter.
That's right.
So let's see how, you know, what they think of it, and with your permission, I will send out a copy, and we'll see just structurally what they recommend, and then we'll go from there. I think that might be a better step, so that way we're not fixing, you know, something that may have to be
If
completely.
I may.
So of course.
I also like Marge's idea too about the committee that's been formed, who will also be taking a hard look at what the district will look like, and those are things that need to be added to the agreement.
Might be.
So,
Speaking of committees, it dawned on us as we're doing our negotiations, we'll be starting our negotiations with our 2 bargaining units, and we had our very first inter-based bargaining meeting with the teachers' union, the NDEA, just, was it last night?
Monday night.
Monday night.
Last night.
Last night, it was last night, and it seems they all blend together. So, what is customary is that someone from this group.
Statutory.
Yes,
So-
it has to be invited.
Has to be invited. So please know that you'll be receiving an email and the last person to put their finger on their nose has to come to negotiations.
Yes.
No, but it's certainly invited, and if there's someone from this immediate group that would like to be part of that, just to,
Mr. Chairman,
it's,
Yes, sir.
if you mind, I'll step up and I'll be the last one to touch my nose if you'd like.
All right.
If that's, so might as well.
And it's also with Phillipston, because it's one member from both towns. I believe, John, you were our last representative from the two towns that sat through our
Diane,
previous
were you on that?
negotiations.
Diane, Were you on it?
And I don't have the law in front of me, and maybe Carter, if you remember off the top of your head, obviously when it comes at the end, and the
John
school, the
Columbus
big
might
thing
have
is
been.
at the end, when the school committee votes,
I'll fill that out.
there is a
I know
vote of
John.
that person that is recorded, yea or nay against the contract. I do wanna preface though,
I think
just,
John
because things have
Columbus
changed, we are doing interest-based bargaining, we're not doing traditional demand-based bargaining. So, we spend a lot of time, and we certainly will welcome whoever wants to sit as often as you are able and willing to come. We spend a lot of time with our NDA counterparts to look at the issues via an interest-based bargaining method. So it's a much longer path and much friendlier, and we have had a lot of success with
Statutory
so far.
reference to the hand.
Okay, who's managing that at this point? That group, who's managing it?
Well, we have a subcommittee of our school committee, the NDEA negotiations team,
And who's the
myself.
chairman of that?
Vicky Chartier is
Okay,
the
so-
chairman, and Lori Matson, the three of us are on that, for the NDEA.
Right.
The
They
UFCW
don't have
hasn't,
statutory right to be on the subcommittee, the bargaining subcommittee.
they could be the bargaining,
They could-
They have a statutory right to
To-
be a
but they're not part of the.
Be
observer
part
and
of-
participant,
Mhm.
but they do not have a statutory right to be on the bargaining subcommittee.
right, so there,
I'd have to pull the
Yes.
statute, and it may have been amended since I've worked with it last, and I think that would.
So who sent, my point is, who sends out the emails? So when these meetings are happening,
Yeah,
who sends out
how do
those?
so
we
that will
know?
come probably from Chris's office, because they just help coordinate, keep us honest and coordinate everything. They are publicly posted meetings, so they are posted on our website through our Board Docs link. So they are out there, they're executive session though, so they are not open to the public. As well as when we actually do the final vote, that is done in executive session, then we come out into open session and then we revote there to
gotcha.
confirm.
My point being, Cameron's gonna be that lead on that, so if you can get his email address,
Yeah.
We have to vote.
okay.
There's
Well,
no
the
vote,
two
it's a yea or
communities
nay.
need to agree on this.
As long as
The
we
two
agree.
towns have to agree, yeah,
Yes.
as long as
Yeah.
Phillipston's okay with Cameron doing, you guys have to.
Yeah, there's
work
a,
You guys
that
agree?
I haven't sent out the
Yeah,
email, by the way,
yeah.
so I haven't even sent out the email, so.
Yeah.
Because you have one guy too, right?
No, it's one for both towns.
One-
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, one
if
for
we
both.
had
I thought it was
five,
one
if we had
for
five
all.
towns, it would be one
One
for all,
person.
yeah.
No wonder why
towns.
Templeton hasn't been, because this is the first I'm hearing about it.
So why don't we wait till the email's sent out, but can I have your website, by the way, because I don't,
NRSD.org.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just been a long time.
Yeah,
So-
no, it's out there, we have a couple of ways that get to
There's
our
no
other
motion.
site,
There's
but
no
yeah,
one-
yeah.
First, you have to decide between the two communities
Right,
how you will select the one person who will represent you both.
I haven't even sent the email out to
Yeah.
do that yet, so that's.
You
Or
know,
just a heads up
But we're
that
here
it's
now,
coming.
so I mean-
Yeah.
You only get one person, and as she said, if you got 5 members of the district, you get one person, and if you're Monty Tech and you got 30-plus members, you get one person. That's the statute. It is not uncommon for smaller districts to do it on a rotating basis. That said, the person who's representing the one community is generally expected to come to the other community and keep them tuned in.
I think that's something that's
Going on.
missing out of the agreement.
It's
Well,
statute.
it's law, it is law, so really,
Right.
by virtue of not being in there, but it probably may,
It's part of ed reform.
yeah,
Right.
so, should we put it in there? I don't know, it's something that we certainly, I'm sure a lawyer will have a lot to say about.
Absolutely, yeah. And then we can actually switch off,
Or- As I
between
said, I
folks.
believe it was John Phillipston the last time from Phillipston. I don't know how that choice was made, because that goes back several years now. But more of just a heads up for when Chris gets that formal letter memo out to you guys.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
would you guys be comfortable on taking that decision now, or do you guys want to wait on that choice? Because since we're both here
It's not
now.
on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda.
But if the chairman did not
we can't.
reasonably anticipate it, which he did not,
I didn't.
he can put it on there. I guess it would have to be agreed on by both chairs because it is a joint town meeting, so, just saying.
She is right. Can we,
Could argue, may I throw a suggestion? May I throw a suggestion out? Just
go ahead, Dr. Cosmo.
maybe make it a lot easier, maybe a little bit more palatable. Although I don't have the voice to say this necessarily, but we have a finance subcommittee on Thursday night. Everybody spoke about this earlier. There very well could be a recommendation from, said me, that we would want to meet about the budget with all boards. Okay, pretty much everyone here plus, et cetera, which would happen in the very near future, given what we just talked about regarding the budget timeline. I would suggest that I will, of course, send my email out, but it'd be during that meeting that I still haven't asked if will happen, that could be on, that would be an agenda item.
Excellent.
And that would
Makes sense to me.
that would alleviate any potential of, open meeting law violations, or people have time to think about things, and I would suggest that, again, I'm just one lone voice, but.
And I'll pull out that section of the
I
statute
think
so
that'd be
that
fine.
when you send that email,
Yeah.
I can forward out to both sides.
That'd be
And I-
great.
And
I
I'll
forget, it's in
apologize for
chapter
not
s-
having that in advance, because it was kind of a last minute, like,
Yeah.
hey, let's just mention it,
Since you were
so they
all
give a
here.
heads up.
Right.
So I apologize, we would have been
Yeah.
more prepared had we thought of it more than 30
And if we can get that
seconds
meeting
before.
quickly enough, you won't be that much deeper in the negotiations.
That's absolutely right.
Great, that solves the
I'm
problem.
interested in how your interest-based bargaining goes.
We are aces.
That's good, that's great.
And if it meant that we got together again, that's not a bad thing either.
No, not at all.
Because I think a lot has started between us, like, or maybe even my naivety of how hard it was for someone new coming on. I mean, we all hit the ground running, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing. And
Right.
some good suggestions came up of changing when that person actually becomes effective.
Right.
So, another meeting would be good.
I think it's gonna be great.
And like I said, we'll schedule that as quickly as we can, given everyone's schedule, if
Excellent.
it's approved.
Excellent. Anything else to add, Carter?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted to
wanna
say
thank-
thank you all for sharing.
Doug?
Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, hold on one second, Kim. Doug?
No, just thank you all. I think it was a very productive discussion. And, I look forward to more of them.
Go ahead. Okay, Cam? Good.
I just want to say thank you guys, and I think this is a step in the right direction between the communities to, as we do share an agreement, I think we should probably be in constant contact, if not at least more so than we have been in the past. And I think this is a great step in the direction. I hope to see more of you guys in the years to come.
Gentlemen, from my perspective, I think this is, I think, a good start in the right direction. Communication is key. I want to remiss the town clerks, thanks for coming. I really appreciate you guys being here. Chief, thanks for coming. Thanks for all your questions. If you have more, please write them down, send them to Mr. Tanzini, don't send them to us. And we'll get them from him, that'll be great. But again, thank you so much for everything. Dr. Cosma, thanks for attending. Thank you for attending. It's always a pleasure seeing you guys. And obviously, the love that we have for the regional school district, I think you can see it on both sides of this table and that one. And working together in harmony, I think, is gonna be the key for success.
Mr. Chairman, once we have the YouTube link for this video, I will send that over to Kevin so the town can put that up on their website for citizens of their community that might wish to view it.
Right. Do you guys have anything to add? No?
Not at this point.
Okay, great. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
We need to adjourn as well.
I see none. Cam?
Yes.
Well, I
Julie?
would make a
Yes.
motion, we adjourn.
Second? Doug?
Made and seconded.
And Chair votes yes as well.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you so much again. My throat is killing me.